Okay. Hello, everyone. I thought of recording an episode, and I am actually pretty tired. But a sort of alignment of inner thought with the outer realm occurred for me, and I thought I should share. My attention, my mind went to this idea that if in the future the human species was under invasion, attack, under something, that means there was some sort of conflict, there was some sort of battle in the outer realms, and let's say a united humanity had to defend itself, from strange forces. Pretty much I thought about a very intense world event which isn't like a species civil war. I thought about how would a species psychologically defend itself from, let's say, hypothetically speaking, an extraterrestrial invasion. I thought about how would the strength of the human species activate in the face of its collective obstacles. And so this term came to me, the statement, the mighty have noticed the potential of greatness. Now, of course, I perceive myself as a actually very silly person. But there has been moments where I have in my inner realms experienced an intense force. And some things, like there's food you eat and it gives you like energy, it gives you some force, but when it comes to existential circumstances, when it comes to situations and how history will be written, it's as if there's it's like a person can get energy from food and behind their eyes in their inner realms, energy comes to one when it is important. This is honestly the biggest thing I've realized about human psychology. When something becomes important, the mind shifts from a reactive state into a conscious response. And so, I'm in 2022 giving this talk right now. The trees, the forests are still here, there's many life forms on the planet, but in the future, they may get eradicated. It's as if our human beings are trying to live well, but the way human beings live well is kind of having a destructive influence on the nature that is required to keep us human. It's as if a dehumanized tendency in the consideration of what a human being has to be is making the human being ignore how it is destroying its own nature. But anyways, I want the listeners to have this perspective. I'm trying to solve a problem in this episode, and I want the listeners to accompany me and you can even share in the comment section what you would do. But for me, it feels that if there was an existential situation where a species had to muster up its strength, right? And let's say it was healthy, like it was a healthy biological species, every human being had strength, physical strength, and now the only type of strength, this is where I would say in the outer realms a person is strong, but in the inner realms a person can be mighty. And what mighty means is that in the inner realms, the projections of the world can surpass the outer realms. And what I mean by this is that behind your eyes, you can envision a future that is victorious. And the moment the human being envisions just a drop of a victorious future, it's as if, as the poet Attar says, this ocean can be yours. The moment, whoever you are, in whatever character of a story you find yourself in, The moment you see the possibility of something better, some part of your intelligent conscious system knows that there is an additional route, there is another way the moment can happen. Do you know, it's as if imagine generations of people being born and all of them thinking that they are enslaved by karma. And imagine a generation of human beings arise where for them it's as if they do not fear karma, karma fears them. Do you know? Poetically, I would say the lords of karma do not touch those who have understood their being the universe first. You see, it's a very gigantic event. This is the beauty of our world, that whatever we experience remains as a small part of it, but what is experiencing that small part is all of it. And so imagine a situation where human beings, let's say hypothetically in a parallel universe of Earth that's similar to how Earth is in 2020 now, imagine in that parallel universe of Earth there was suddenly an invasion and these, let's say, extraterrestrials landed. You know, and they, I don't know, let's say half robot, half extraterrestrial. I don't know. I'm just trying to create some sort of antagonistic part of the story. But what it is I'm trying to say is that imagine the whole species had to defend itself from invasion. Now, in this situation, pretty much the species starts off with either being overwhelmed, do you know, or offended, or in some sense there is some sort of emotional response where your space is invaded, do you know? And now imagine the space of the species, like in the kingdom of mankind, you know, otherworldly intervention is in some sense. How would I say it? There's divine interception, which is intervention, which is inconceivable, and then there is the opposite of the divine intervention, which is conceivable. This means that when shapes go to war, those who have seen the greatest picture win. And I'll tell you, I'll share something happened, you know, today for me. Something strange, a very intense, emotional. Pretty much it's nothing important, like nothing big, but pretty much I was driving 40 minutes on the highway, and in that 40 minutes this song started to play, and it just like background, I played this ambient song, and this song had such an impact on me where in the middle of like I was driving and suddenly my right hand, I don't know how to tell you, it was as if like, it's like the strength of pointing, I don't know how to I don't know how to say this. Let me see. Pretty much, guys, I felt that something great is possible, and I started tearing up because I felt that it's being ignored, you know, I have asked myself sometimes, do I love myself? I have asked myself sometimes, do I love others? And you know, the answer to those two questions varies, but the answer to do I love my world, it's an instant yes, right? It's as if you don't love the world, you don't love anything in it, you know? And I thought about like what events need to take place to make a species with a common similar biological design to in some sense awaken to its ability. You see, it's as if you see someone do something you can't, and it inspires. I remember when I was young, I saw Ronaldinho, and he has this special trick he does. Or there was the soccer player called Quaresma, who, you know, was known to do this trick called the Rabona. And I remember I saw something that was possible that I did not have access to, and suddenly it became important to me to find access, right? It's as if the story of Civilization 1.0 has become so miserable, and the retaliation to this sort of collective misery is just to bring hope nearby enough, for in some sense those that their will is bound by memory to be released by potential reality. I don't know what it is, but it's like when it's time, the lion roars, and I feel, when the time comes, an advanced civilization will suddenly realize its greatness is in reach, and it will, in some sense, the might of the advanced communicators will be seen, right? I remember hearing this quote from Isaac Asimov. He said, "Violence is the last refuge of the incompetent." And to me, those who are mighty, it's as if their might is rooted in the competence of achievement. You see this in, I used like a soccer player example. You see, imagine two teams are playing, soccer, and there's a player in one of the teams that is convinced that their team has won and will win and cannot be defeated. And anytime this player gets the ball, it's as if nobody can get the ball from this player. Why? Because behind the eyes of the player, the ability is not only actualized, it is so possible that it can't be doubted, right? And for me, it's as if the task of I would say, the archetypally masked soul. Pretty much I find the purpose of individual life is to activate the collective life. The purpose of the collective life is to, in some sense, take care of all its individual lives. And after the collective life has acknowledged all its individual dimensions and has realized they are all collectively present, then there comes the greatness of not a created force, but a creator force. They say man is made in the image of God. And so what did God do? He created a universe. The idea of God, and through theology, it's as if like it's world creation personified, personalized. And so I am telling you, it's like the ability of an artist that has drawn so many paintings that the moment he sees an empty page behind the eyes of the artist, it is not empty. And so it should be the same for human beings, that they enter an empty world and behind their eyes it is not empty. And so the greatness of the world, it is not celebrations too soon or too late, it is I am telling you that the moment you notice greatness is in reach, a force will find you, and the greatest type of, I would say, might, right? Like the mightiest beings, they are selfless. Why? Because their self blocks them. Do you know? This is something we never think about. We think that we have to be a sense of self 24/7 or we're not human, not realizing that we are human beings and there's a state of being before the consciousness actually recalibrates the human identity. And once the individual finds the personality, experiences the strength of its unconditional presence. It's as if the person was afraid of death, and then they're like, wait a minute, I'm made of energy. Energy can't be created or destroyed, right? The person was afraid of let's say the death of the species, and they were like, as long as new eyes roam this world, it will never end. It's as if the geometry of the effort of civilizations on rocks hovering in the middle of nowhere has been, it's as if we are not the only ones trying to make it beyond the veil of the senses. And beyond this dimension, poetically, I would tell you that through an instantaneous certainty of how one is being, they are free. It's as if right now we are experiencing being a self in a world. I have this theory, I guess, that after this lifetime we will experience ourselves as a world, not as a self in a world, as a world in a self. We will become the eyes of all living beings in the universal cycle. You know, I find that in Mahayana Buddhism, you know, it's as if you notice in Mahayana Buddhism, they're saying for the sake of all sentient beings. It's like why does this monk have so much compassion? Oh, it's for all sentient beings, right? Which is another way of saying that when we care for the conscious life of this cosmic event, not just fragments of it, then there comes strength in slowly becoming a universal being. I don't know how else to say this. I mean, think about it wherever you are, that what are the options for the human being? You know, we either identify as nothing, we either identify as a singular thing, we either identify as a dualistic thing, or in some sense, the effort of the human being is infinite. I mean, just look at what's going on for the species. Human beings live temporary lives, but the species is still around. They say 99.9% of species goes extinct, and the reason for that number is because we're still here. And you know, sometimes it's easier to talk about something than doing it, you know. Imagine in a parallel universe of Earth, in a potential parallel universe. Unlike how on this Earth it is easier to become demotivated than motivated. Imagine a species that it's like flipped around. You know, imagine you looked in the eyes of every human being and you saw what they knew they deserved in the future, or what their species deserved. When I see that there is gentle, playful, loving, peaceful, kind, wise, honorable, and let's say honest human beings on this planet, it's as if some part of all that constitutes humanity deserves its future. Do you know? Pretty much, I think the intent behind this episode is to tell people that wonder about what is important to your world, and you will find a selfless power that will guide you through many situations. You know, I can tell you that moments in this lifetime where I suddenly became playful, had a playful attitude to the moment, it's as if, you know what it is? It's as if it's like the moment we accept something, we can then trust it, and the moment we trust it, we can play, and the moment from a trusted state we play, that's the freedom of, I would say, a multidimensional mind. You know, it took me a while to learn this, and even right now, it's still one of those lessons where When I look at myself in the inner realms, I trust more of reality than in the outer realms. And I'm still giving these talks, you know. It's as if the human being, imagine suddenly in a religious universe, had an audience with God. God suddenly started speaking to this random human being. Okay. Now, this is a hypothetical scenario, but I'm saying, like, you know, and imagine the human being asked God and said, like, let's say the human being was a philosopher, and this philosopher that suddenly was talking to God asks God, why have you created a limited world when your creation, when in some sense what you have created to live in this limitless world, in this limited world, is limitless? It's as if, like, the philosopher saying, why give us a taste of a greater dimension with the evolution of the mind, and yet have us remain as bodies in a world that is incomplete? It's like in front of our eyes there's work to do, behind our eyes the work has been done. And the best explanation, at least I can fathom, of why we have a sort of kind of temporary life in front of our eyes and a sort of eternal vision behind our eyes, it's because we are like the translators between two dimensions of being. You know, the purpose of human life is to be a bridge between what it can see and what is seen. What it can see and what is seen. You know, I have a reverence for the archetype of the general, the archetype of the commander. Just as a kid, it was a fascinating archetype. And then I thought about the realistic situations back in the day where generals and commanders had to inspire their army. And the general or commander that could explain to its army why it was important for there to be victory instantly motivated the army through the context of reality. Like you see this in movies even, right? Where it's as if, like, I don't know, this king or this somebody, this commander, he looks at the army and he says it's like a kingdom under siege, and, you know, the speech goes something in the lines of, like, you know, if we lose this battle, then our whole kingdom fails. And to me, our species in 2022 has not reached the point where it's acknowledging one human kingdom. One human kingdom. Do you know? And a human kingdom, I'll tell you, the kingdom, the civilization 2.0 idea, it is a human kingdom where the king is the greatness of the future. That is it. That is the motive. That means, imagine there was a king so great that his future self time traveled back to help him, and he told his future self to sit back and take notes, you know? You know, I want every human being, I don't know why I am, you know, alive on this earth to speak such words. But I feel that when the species cares to defend the kingdom of life, I am telling you, it's like You know, when you do something righteously, it becomes might. When you do something unrighteously, it becomes wrath. Wrath is a response to the unrighteous. Might is a response to the righteous. And so imagine our species was under an invasion, both externally and internally. Immediately, the commanders of humanity would shout, in some sense, to preserve what we have and then take advancements forward. Do you know? It could be that what is protecting the human species is its connection to nature. And if it loses its connection to its nature, in some sense the Trojan horse of an artificial future has arrived. I don't know who it was who said it. The person said something in the lines of like, I don't agree with you, but I will die fighting for your right to say it, and it was a suggestion that the freedom of the collective, of the whole system, is greater than the freedom of one man. What sort of enlightenment and salvation are we looking for when the world in front of us is in some sense being defeated slowly? Do you know that it's like I could totally see, that certain conquerors in history were in some sense neat freaks, They were perfectionists, but they were perfectionists in regards to the amount of effort they put to, in some sense, actualize their inner. If the species faces conflict, it must perceive itself greater than the conflict to overcome it. In any situation where there is an opposing force, to the person, if they don't perceive a greater value than that which is opposing them, they will get conquered. History is filled with examples of those fighting for, how would I say it? It's as if the armies of truth, not religious truth, but the armies of truth, like the actuality of the truth of the moment. It's another way of saying like the innocent, like imagine an army of innocent soldiers and an army of like not innocent soldiers. It's like the strength, the inner strength that the innocent soldiers can muster up is so beyond those who have entertained the simulations of life. Which is another way of saying, like, what it's like, who was it, Aristotle or Socrates, one of these guys, where he was saying those people who lie, they are actually creating multiple simulations to be in, right? That means the person has to remember the artificial self of every moment that they were dishonest. Right. Now imagine when I say somebody's innocent, that means they are in some sense walking with the honesty of the events of nature. I think there's even a better word than innocence. Maybe I could say those who care for the world will have a strength that those who don't care for the world cannot find. And when I say care for your world, because I'm actually, taking a shortcut, when you care for your world, you care for your species, everything in it, part of it, right? That means imagine aliens landed on Earth in the future and they started like killing cows or something, Or let me use a different example. Imagine these aliens in the future landed and these aliens hated like dogs or something, right? And it was as if an alien extraterrestrial invasion against dogs, right? Like pet owners would all be horrified, like, what the fuck? Where'd my dog go? This is bizarre. And so it would be something that the human species, in its association to how something in its world was a part of it, it's as if you don't care for those who you have walked with, it's as if you were never alive. right? And that includes all dimensions of factors and reality. It's as if, like, if the trees start getting destroyed, it's like a technological invasion of nature. If human beings become unhealthy due to, let's say, blind, death-bound cultures, it's as if, like, death-accelerated cultures. It's like you are alive once, and the brain, or all that is being you, it is an instrument, and every human being, before they die, they are choosing what kind of, music their life will be. And I feel that there is no way, there is so many life forms on this planet, and nothing out beyond it is watching. It's as if we are like, imagine, like, this is going to be a hilarious thing to say, but imagine civilizations on planets were like TV screens for higher dimensions. And it's as if the demigods got bored, so they started, I shouldn't say demigods, let's say the gods got bored and they started watching humans. Right, watching the demigods, and the demigods got bored and they started watching humans, and the humans got bored and they started watching animals as the creator archetype, and then the animals got bored and then they returned to energy. Right, it's as if the biggest question, this is one of my personal biggest questions, even about the idea of the Big Bang, the theory of the Big Bang, that what could have predicted creaturehood's personality projections? It's as if, who knew an explosion would lead to all of this? Do you see? It's as if because we are born, we have a singular opinion on the universe starting, but it could be that where we are right now is an intersection of many bridges, and really what Earth is it is an airport between various dimensions of being. It's as if you go to a different terminal, there's a different flight. It's like the yogi sat down in a cave, closed its eyes, realized it was the space of the world before there could even be time. It's as if before you are a character in a story, there's an attention, unknown attention present. And whenever the person realizes that what is looking out through their eyes is unknown, it's another way of saying the potential of the free will is unknown. And the unknown is a permission slip to anything. It's as if, why is everything possible? It's as if the impossible doesn't exist when the possibilities haven't even been tried yet. In this world of ours, I hear a lot of, I've wondered about it from, like, how a psychologist would view the concept of confidence, like the psychology behind confidence, and I've just realized it is those who have found certainty before action. And certainty is another way of saying, like, you have found the truth that is waiting to happen. It's honestly such a bizarre situation. It's as if creatures on a rock, and their whole destiny is to fly beyond this rock, to go into outer space, and then from outer space to have universal, let's say, galactic expansion, and then universal expansion and whatnot, based on the categories we give to the macrocosm. And eventually we will reach a point where we will get bored of infinity. And usually that's when the world resets. That's when, excuse me, from a religious angle, an apocalypse happens. When infinity is finished. That means this is pretty much my view of how there is what we call existence is actually the spiral of universes, starting from nothing, then being singular, then dualistic, then infinite, then returning to nothing. It's as if, what would infinity wonder about? What it doesn't have access, how, in whatever way you are defined. You notice beyond the edge of that definition, there's a you haven't met. You know, I have met my past selves, I was them, and they exist as memories to me. But when I wonder about my future self, it is how the past behave. So in some sense, this is a strange idea, but I think for a mystic, it might be a great idea, where it's as if a person not wondering about what memories they have, but wondering about how memories behave in the space of their mind. You know, this is something a lot of people don't have the witnessing patience for. Not to think that, like, a person, like, there's some people who sit down to meditate and they're like, my God, I got so many thoughts. Like, it's impossible to not have thoughts, you know. And then it's like the opposite of a recognition. It's not the thought that's important, it is how the thought appears. To me, it's as if there is my inner realm right now as I'm speaking to you. And in my inner realm, like before I speak, I'm seeing images, I'm seeing events. Now, if this event, like how would I tell you? It's like two sides to the inner realms. All right. One angle is, it's like, what is the content? What is the person actually seeing behind their eyes? Then the other thing is, how is the sight moving, regardless of what it is? And that's when, if you can watch how your thoughts behave in an unopinionated way, you will suddenly get goosebumps in realizing there has always been an unknown movement here. That means the person may not know, like, how every organ in their body works, but they know that it is there. You know, it's as if, how would I tell you? The heart beats regardless of, you know, our opinion on it. And the nature of the truth of perception is that its essence is automated, and regardless of how we know its unknown nature. You know, if the species goes extinct in the next 200 years, I would be like, that is the biggest waste of time. You know, it's 4.5 billion years just for the species to, in some sense, accept a sort of misery of a materialistic extinction. It's like, then what's the point? You know, we do consider civilizations rising or falling, but we know that we managed to get here. You know what it is? It's kind of like, you know, you mow your lawn, but the grass grows again. And it's as if civilizations rise and fall due to events in nature. But then they arise again. Like, sometimes I think about how many human beings from past civilizations, they thought that it's like their civilization would reach an end. You know, it's kind of like, this is one of the reasons where I would say, how would I say it? It's like, the moment you bring something into this world, you have to watch its end, you know. And who knows, when the human being dies, maybe the Abrahamic God is actually crying. The dance of creation and creator, you know, the dance of the unknown ways attention is being and the known ways it moves. We are energetic pilots of an elemental plane, and our minds are the destination of matter. This is something that the only person on this planet, I mean, there's probably many yogis who've spoken about it, but I would say in modern Western sense, the only person I've seen talk about it is Terence McKenna. There are some who, there are people who think that it's like the world is just physical and it's just the body, and then the mind is like a temporary projector, is being projected by the brain. It's like a temporary film. And then I would say for the mystic, it's like this is where it becomes fascinating, where it's as if the materialistic universe is becoming a transcendental memory of a selfless space, where it's as if again, after yourself has journeyed through the world journeys through the self. I think a lot of people who have near-death experiences, or some people say when death comes, like your whole life rewinds in front of, like you get to see your whole life again in like a matter of seconds or something, or instantly your whole life rewinds. That's when I would say it's like the self died in the world, now the world has to live in the self. And I think the task of the species should be that it has such a grand perception of itself that in some sense failure is its student. That means the teacher cares for the student, but the student is not on the level of the teacher. And the failures of a materialistic entity, in some sense, upon the realization of the victory of the ever-present mind, it's as if the moment we realize the mind is not an object, it's as if that is when the mind could never die. Imagine a programmer writes code and then sees this code turn into like this, sort of have a unique application, turn into this app. And it's as if, imagine the app being deleted, but the code has already been saved from before. For the mind, or let's say to an eternal being, nothing can be lost. And to a temporary being, nothing can be found. This is why, like if you make knowledge the purpose of life, it's as if you'll see you can't catch the butterfly of infinity. But if you make the wonder for how advanced in all dimensions and intelligence can be, whoever you are listening to me, as much as you have a free will to decide who you are, you also have a free will to decide what kind of context that self, what kind of world that self is standing in, right? This is something they don't teach children. That when you close your eyes, you are practicing a sort of godhood, where your attention activates reality. It's as if the moment the person is beyond a subjective entity, it's as if, what's reverence for a past life or future life? This is something I'm a huge, like in 2013, I say this in my talks, I was like, I think I broke the record of being the most Tibetan Buddhist Persian guy on the planet. But to me, it's as if the Buddha talks about an enlightenment beyond desire. Right? And it's as if to want to continue a tradition is a desire. People don't realize the actual truth of reality is dehumanized. The human being is a privilege. It's as if, you get to attend an event that had never happened before. But instead of actually, giving your tickets to the, let's say, concert hall and going into the concert, it's as if the moment you wake up in the morning, a world is in attendance. Right now we're living in the phase of what does the self want from the world. In the future, they will be so liberated from ideas of self that they will be like, what does the world want from ourselves? Do you know, it's as if the person was so humble that they noticed like the humility came from the greatness of the realm. I have, of course, being raised in Iran, I remember there used to be Ramadan, and there would be these gatherings where people would they would fast the whole day, and in some sense in the evening break their fast. And I remember it was like there was prayer involved before you broke your fast, and I just remember I had a moment when I was praying and I asked myself, what am I praying to? And again, a sort of goosebump feeling that I am praying to the inconceivable source of all worlds. Do you understand? God is not God. God is not words. It is not a noun. It is the beginning of all endings. Or poetically, the ending of all beginnings. It's as if the religious person, they are like everybody, every soul came from God and every soul returns to God. And when the soul returns to God, God was God from the beginning. In that angle. Really what poetry is, it's just seeing different angles to the same word. We don't realize the brain actually spirals through world creation. We are spiraling through our memories because every new new experience will become a new memory. That new memory will become inputted into where the previous memories are, and eventually there will be a shift. It's like you added drops of water to a cup, and the cup got full to the brim, and then it started to pour out. And then you realize the purpose of life, to experience life to such a degree that in some sense the freedom behind your eyes pours out in front of the way you're content. Dear listener, I want you to try in this lifetime, wherever you are, and if you have a balcony, that's great, go on your balcony, or wherever you are, just go and look at your world and try to hear, not its heartbeat, but try to hear what it is going towards, what it is looking at. It's as if there's some people who care how they look at things, like how they look at things, they care about how others look at things, and there's some people who are like, how is the cosmos viewing itself? And the answer is dehumanize, dehumanize, dehumanize. Which is another way of saying destiny was never for a human. It was another way of saying like truth was remembering itself through an illusion. I'm going to go into a quote tunnel of the word might. Right here. All here, mighty. Theodore Roosevelt, far better it is to dare mighty things, to win glorious triumphs, even though checkered by failure, than to rank with those poor spirits who neither enjoy nor suffer much, because they live in a grey twilight that knows not victory nor defeat. Lao Tzu says, he who conquers others is strong. He who conquers himself is mighty. Dwight D. Eisenhower says, farming looks mighty easy when your plow is a pencil and you're 1,000 miles from the cornfield. Okay, here. There's a quote from Aeschylus. From a small seed, a mighty trunk may grow. Marcus Garvey, he says, up, you mighty race, accomplish what you will. David Icke says, today's mighty oak is just yesterday's nut that held its ground. Helen Keller, the world is moved along not only by the mighty shoves of its heroes, but also by the aggregate of tiny pushes of each honest worker. Dante Alighieri says, a mighty flame followeth a tiny spark. Mark Twain says, truth is mighty and will prevail. There's nothing wrong with this except that it ain't so. Plato says, all men are by nature equal, made all of the same earth by one workman. And however we deceive ourselves, as dear unto God as the poor peasant is the mighty prince. That means universal intelligence cares about just how intelligence is being in the universe. It doesn't care what it is. You know, it's as if for a multidimensional being, good and bad was just like, you know, wearing sunglasses at night. This quote is attributed to Christopher Columbus. He says, I have come to believe that this is a mighty continent which was hitherto unknown. Herman Melville says, to produce a mighty book, you must choose a mighty theme. No great and enduring volume can ever be written on the flea, though may there be that have tried it. William Wordsworth says the ocean is a mighty harmonist. Winston Churchill says, when we look back on all the perils through which we have passed, and at the mighty foes that we have laid low, and all the dark and deadly designs that we have frustrated, why should we fear for our future? We have come safely through the worst. Monica Johnson says, God is so unique in giving his people ways to fellowship, witness, and remember what a mighty and merciful God he is. I think that's another way of saying just the universe realizes its potential. Sophocles, I don't know this. So he says, bear up, my child, bear up. Zeus, who oversees and directs all things, is still mighty in heaven. John Donne says, death be not proud, though some have called thee mighty and dreadful, for thou art not so. For those whom thou thinkst thou dost overthrow, die not, poor death, nor yet canst thou kill me. Okay, this quote's beyond you guys. Nikola Tesla says, the spread of civilization may be likened to a fire. First, a feeble spark, next a flickering flame, then a mighty blaze, ever increasing in speed and power. Abraham Lincoln says, I have great respect for the semicolon. It is a mighty, handy little fellow. And that sentence has a semicolon. Rudyard Kipling. And the first rude sketch that the world had seen was joy to his mighty heart, till the devil whispered behind the leaves, it's pretty, but is it art? Charles Wesley says, faith, mighty faith, the promise sees and looks to God alone, laughs at impossibilities and cries it shall be done. Victor Hugo says, greater than the tread of mighty armies is an ideal whose time has come. I think that became one of my favorite quotes. Julius Caesar says, during a few days, halt near Vesantio for the provision of corn and other supplies. A panic arose from inquiries made by our troops and remarks uttered by Gauls and traders who affirmed that the Germans were men of a mighty frame and an incredible valor and skill at arms. Okay, that's an observation. Lord Byron says society is now one polished horde, formed of two mighty tribes, the Boers and Ward. William Shakespeare says, "'Tis best to weigh the enemy more mighty than he seems." Saint Patrick says, "Before I was humiliated, I was like a stone that lies in deep mud, and he who is mighty came, and in his compassion raised me up, and exalted me very high, and placed me on the top of the wall." Simone Weil says, "I feel like I'm small and mighty and pack a powerful punch, just like Tide Pods." This is what you would say poetic advertising. Billy May says, "Broken, busted, everybody has something to repair. Before buying new, let mighty putty fix it." I don't understand these references. Anyways, Alvin W. Barkley, "I would rather be a servant in the house of the Lord than to sit in the seats of the mighty." See, this is the issue with earlier views on religion. They refuse to see everything as God's creation. Joel says, "If the workers took a notion, they could stop all speeding trains. Every ship upon the ocean they can tie with mighty chains." These quotes are, I think, leaving the domain of philosophy. Zora Neale Hurston says, "A thing is mighty big when time and distance cannot shrink it." Muhammad Ali Jinnah says, "There is no parallel in the history of the world. The mighty subcontinent with all kinds of inhabitants has been brought upon a plan which is titanic, unknown, unparalleled. And what is very important with regard to it is that we have achieved it peacefully and by means of an evolution of the greatest possible character." Yeah, guys, I think these quotes are no longer philosophical. Samuel Pepys says, "Mighty proud I am that I am able to have a spare bed for my friends." You see, mighty, if it's egoic, sure, that's shameful, I guess, in the long run. But if might is honorable, do you know, like, honor, might, and vision, if these are infused together, it's as if greatness is natural. Robert Henry says, "There are mighty few people who think what they think they think." That means there's a few who are aware of how their thoughts are present. At least that's how I interpret it. Anyways, that's the end of the quote tunnel. I guess I'll say something about the evolution of control and possession. Right now, in order to survive, an object needs to control itself. When an object decides to control more than itself, that's in some sense possession. A person can possess an object, a person can possess a name. A person can be possessed by names and objects as well. Now, pretty much this is all based on a sort of materialism in a duality that the species hasn't chosen to wander beyond. You know, it's as if we should have gotten the clue when we realized there isn't new languages being created every day. eventually that which seeks possession, to possess, to control, it will realize the temporary nature of reality. That means like a temporary being doesn't have need for possessions. But if a being is under the presumption that it is immortal, then it may think possession is a game. But imagine you have played a possession game for so long that eventually you're like, what is this? Am I going to try to possess the whole cosmos, try to control the whole cosmos? And eventually the person reaches a point where they see that the idea breaks before it breaks anything else. The potential of human greatness is to advance as far as possible in front of our eyes and to advance as far as possible behind our eyes. Regardless of the past, the future awaits. Thanks for listening. Much blessings and namaste. And to all the mighty warriors and heroic spirits on the realm, keep on keeping on, as that movie would say. Joe Dirt. It's like, keep going, you advanced, intelligences in the realm, I would say a name we can give the collective mind of the species in the future can be the advanced intelligence.